one more day in this antivirus periods of time. It rained. I got out here just as it cleared, so it's very pleasant. Little gnats biting here and there. In any case, we're at BibleStudyManuals.net, K96.htm. And we're looking at how they take skulls, the evolutionists, and other parts of human fossils, and even animals in the fossil record. And artists are hired or go ahead and do their own reconstruction of what the animal or human look like. But with bones, you can't tell really the details of the eyes, ears, and nose, and facial structure, other than maybe the overall size of it. Somebody may be older or younger. That can be told, but not with so much detail. And certainly then you draw the conclusion this was an ape, especially if it was pathologically examined to be found to have rickets, which a lot of the Neanderthal remains of fossils show evidence of pathological disease like rickets, lack of vitamin D, lack of sunlight during the Ice Age perhaps. Yet they conclude these are apes. Then they turn around and have to disconclude that. Anyway, bias is also obvious in the way famed artist J. Maternes put flesh on the bones of skull 1470. As seen in June 1973 issue of National Geographic. I'd like to print a little bit bigger. Maternes shows the possessor of skull 1470 to be a young black woman who looks very human, except that she has an ape-like nose. Human noses are composed of cartilage, which normally does not fossilize, and the nose is missing on 1470. It is thus an artistic endeavor. It is obvious that the purpose in giving the reconstructed skull 1470 woman an ape-like nose was to make her look as primitive as possible. I don't think you can draw a conclusion of what she might have looked like. The decision of what kind of nose to give her was an entirely subjective one made by Maternes or his advisors. With a human nose, none would question the full humanity of that woman in National Geographic. Although there was no compelling reason why skulls 1470 and 1590 could not have been ascribed to form some form of Homo sapiens based on their morphology. They were grouped with much smaller Homo habilis material from the Olduvai Gorge. Now, sometimes women are smaller than men, so you don't have to make her smaller because she's another species, but because she's a woman human, or she may just be a smaller person. So many questions. So we have a conclusion on what we've looked at so far. Lubenow draws this in his work, Bones of Contention. He says, there were, however, always some thoughtful evolutionists who were troubled by Homo habilis. 4 problems with the taxon were obvious. This is an imaginary taxon, too, because they're all within the same range of time, that if they all existed at one time or another and were inferior, then the human race wouldn't have advanced further according to evolution. The reversal problem, going from gracile habilis to robust erectus and then back to gracile sapiens. You can't do that. One species is superior to another, and that inferior species then goes away through death. The juvenile nature of some of the postcranial material upon which the bipedality and the tool-making ability of the taxon had been largely based. Just because they're smaller doesn't mean they're more or less advanced. It could be youth or just a smaller human. This disparity of cranial volumes, with 1470 and 1590 being within the human range, while others, such as 1805, 1813, and OH24, are far too small to be considered human, but they group them together for their own belief purposes. The fact that the postcranial material had not been found in direct association with the cranial material, thus evolutionists exhibited a deep faith that all of this material actually belonged in the same category. It's like we had the femur was found 15 to 20 feet away from the skull cap. Well, how do you know it came from the same individual? The problem of Homo habilis now appears to be solved. In 1986, Tim White, working with Don Johansen and others at Olduvai Gorge, discovered a partial adult skeleton that has been designated Olduvai hominid 62 and dated at about 1.8 million years ago. Wow. I thought the humans were hundreds of thousands, maybe 200,000 years away, not 1.8 million. Donald C. Johansen, Maceo, Eck, White, Walter, Kimball, and so on. The cranium and teeth of OH62 are very similar to the smaller Homo habilis skulls, 1805, 1813, and OH24, and are thus properly classified with them. However, it was the first time that postcranial material had been found in unquestioned association with a Homo habilis skull. The surprise was that the body of this Homo habilis adult was not large, as Homo habilis was supposed to be. It was actually smaller than a Lucy, just a bit more than 3 feet tall. Thus we have strong evidence that the category known as Homo habilis is not a legitimate taxon, but is composed of a mixture of material from at least 2 separate taxa, one large and one small. So the arms and the legs of this individual was an ape, but the stomach and the toes were fully human. Really. This new discovery also seems to remove the taxon Homo habilis as a legitimate transition between Afarensis, or Africanus, and Homo erectus. Evidence that Homo habilis was made up of 2 distinct forms, a larger human form and a smaller non-human form, had been presented even before this discovery. Based on our work on endocranial casts of 2 Homo habilis fossils, 1470 and 1805, Dean Falk wrote, "The evidence presented shows that 1805, the basal view, is similar to that from an African pongid or ape, whereas the endocast of 1470 is shaped like that of a modern human." Dean Falk and cerebral cortices of early African, East African early hominids, Science magazine. There is no compelling reason, he says, why the large Homo habilis material, skulls 1470 and 1590, cannot be classified as Homo sapiens based upon their morphology. While it is impossible to prove the association of skull 1470 with the leg bones of 1481, they could be next to each other. It doesn't mean they're the same individual. The probability is high that they both belong to the same type of individual. They are virtually indistinguishable from modern human leg bones. They're smaller in size. Maybe they were children. The small Homo habilis material, including 1805, 1813, OH24, and OH62, does not belong in the genus Homo and should never have been so classified. This material is best described as the being Australopithecus, variants or of companion species to Africanus or Afarensis, which are not human, they're apes. They're extinct primates. And here we go. Australopithecus, extinct primates, not an intermediate species. The Australopithecus are simply extinct primates, Lewin says. The fact that 2 humans appeared in the fossil record before the Australopithecus and lived as contemporaries with the Australopithecus throughout all of the Australopithecine history reveals that the Australopithecus had nothing to do with human origins. The evolutionary rule, A superior species, one that evolved from an inferior one, the inferior one has to disappear over a short period of time. Australopithecine authority Charles Oxnard concludes the genus Homo may in fact be so ancient as to parallel entirely the genus Australopithecus, thus denying the latter a direct place in the human lineage. He wrote that in Nature magazine. So, the Australopithecines do not appear in the fossil record at the relevant time. Oh, okay, they are far too late. Furthermore, although brain organization is more important than brain size alone, the significant gap between the cranial capacities of the largest Australopithecine and the smallest human fossil or living has not been bridged. This is not a smooth transition from non-human to human fossil in this regard. The evidence for Australopithecine bipedality is controversial. While there is strong evidence that Australopithecine locomotion was significantly different from that of humans or other primates, this issue is irrelevant. Bipedality does not prove a human relationship. The birds are bipedal, they're not human, but no one suggests that they are closely related to humans. They're just grasping at straws. Evolutionists make much of the alleged Australopithecine bipedality because to make a case for human evolution, they must demonstrate the origin of bipedality from a primate stock. Unfortunately, the Australopithecine evidence comes far too late in the fossil record. As shown in the Laetoli footprints, when the Australopithecines first appear in the fossil record, two humans were already walking. Don Patton comments, Australopithecus, represented in this manner in Time Life's book, The Missing Link, this ill-clad creature, by the artist's designation, is the star of the show, and would gain first notoriety through the efforts of Richard Leakey in Africa and made widely known by National Geographic, where he found the Nutcracker Man. Another famous finder of Australopithecine material is Donald Johanson. He found Lucy. What is not mentioned in his book about Lucy is the fact that the bottom portion of the skeleton fossil, the knee and the leg bone, which is what defines her as the ancestor of humans, was not found with the rest of the skeleton. That knee bone and leg bone was found some 3 miles away. Would she die and throw her bones away? And according to Johansen, some 50 meters lower in strata. So it took her millions of years to die. But he put them together, and so you've got some ape bones connected with knee bones and leg bones, really small, but which were supposed to have walked upright. Many would deny all of the implications of that. Many would say that Lucy is much more like a pygmy chimpanzee today, which does walk somewhat upright, but certainly not human-like. What is left out of most of the Australopithecine material, especially regarding the Leakey's effort, is that they don't think at all and never did think that this led to man or has anything to do with man. Notice the point that is acknowledged by Lewin, the editor of Research News and Science magazine. He says, Richard and his parents, Louis and Mary, have held to a view of human origins for nearly half a century now that the line of true man, the line of Homo, large brain, toolmaking, and so on, has a separate ancestry that goes back millions and millions of years. And the ape-man, Australopithecus, has nothing to do with the human ancestry. So one paleontologist goes along and gets all excited and starts publishing all over the place. And then another one, even more famous, throws it all out in the trash with one fell swoop. No relativity at all. Wow. That's how you milk the wallet. Now, you won't find that in your biology textbooks, or earth science or anthropology textbooks in undergraduate work. There are many other authorities who agree with Lewin, saying that this star of the show, Australopithecus, had nothing to do with the lineage of man, even though they are devout evolutionists. Charles Oxnard is no lightweight in the field of anthropology. He's dean of the graduate school and the professor of biology and anatomy at the University of Southern California. He's writing in the American Biology Teacher when he says conventional wisdom, and that's what's reported in the textbooks, is that the Australopithecine fragments are generally rather similar to humans. The new studies point to different conclusions. More on this later.